So I was driving around the greater downtown Nashville area today on the way into the office, and I thought to myself, we are less than a week away from what I call game week protocol. Maybe your mind doesn't work like this, but my mind works like this. My entire life, as long as I've been a fully functioning adult, even before I was in the college football and media business, my entire world revolved around college football season. So if you're having a terrible week in the middle of March, you're just having a terrible week. But come fall, you're having a terrible week. Tuesday, I can't make it better for you, nor could I make it better for myself due to factors outside of my control. But game week protocol means there's always that light at the end of the tunnel, that Saturday light. And if you believe in week 0, and we do around here, contrary to some rumors on the internet, next week's that week. So your Wednesday could suck next week, but you know good and well, you got Iowa State, Kansas State to bail you out. They may be playing it halfway around the world, but it's great. It's a college football, good thing, maybe the best of things, and no great thing ever dies. It is Tuesday night, August 12th, the year of our Lord 2025. We are high atop a steamy downtown Nashville, Tennessee, jam-packed. You know what tonight is, people. If you're from around these parts, the next sentence out of my mouth means a lot to you. It is JP Poll debut night. And if you're not from around here, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you stick around, you will come to understand we do things a little different around here, and we don't necessarily believe that you are what your record says you are. We don't necessarily take part in rankings as much as we do power ratings, and they are not the same thing. So JP poll versus AP poll on tonight's show, we're doing it. We're going to wait another week, but the AP dropped, and I said we cannot let this go unanswered. And so we will answer tonight. I've got fall camp intel, as we do every show in August. John Mateer. The live chat wants me to talk John Mateer. The socials want me to talk John Mateer. And so you know what I'm going to do in tonight's show? I'm going to talk about John Mateer. I promise I'll have an entire segment on John Mateer. Does that suit you? Does that sound good for everyone? Sick people out there. He put out a statement, guys. He didn't do it. He put out a statement. What more do you want? I put out statements on Twitter all the time and expect no one to ask me questions about it. We've also got bold predictions on the show tonight. So they're watching us in Concordia, Kansas, West Palm Beach, Florida, Stanley, North Carolina. Ironic because I have a friend named Stanley that recently moved to North Carolina. And Denver, Colorado. Hey, listen, it's written on this piece of paper, so it must be true. Sounds like we may have an early start time Thursday. At least we have a show Thursday. For a little while, we didn't have a show on Thursdays. 5 Eastern, 4 Central, Jesse, producer Jesse, still alive. Still real, if you ever believed in him before. He tells me that we can get on air at 5 Eastern, 4 Central Thursday. And so if we do, great. If we don't, it's Jesse's fault. You know how to get in touch with him. Here we go. I hold in my hands one of the most, I can't even get it out. Just go ahead and say immunity. I hold in my hands one of the most important polls in the modern era. The JP poll is set to debut as we speak. Listen, that is the sound of it hitting the table in front of me. If you're new around here, I just want to briefly explain. And if you're around here and have been for a while, you know that my explanation is not going to mean a thing. But I try in vain every year to explain our thinking on this. Rankings are okay. Rankings have always had a place in college football. I'm not even one of these people who yells we need to do away with preseason rankings. Do your rankings. You know, be willing to adjust once the games start, but have your rankings, have your AP poll, have your coaches poll, have all that. I just don't participate in it. That's okay. Different strokes for different folks, as Meemaw would always say. As she made meatloaf that some of you may or may not like. Just preference. It's a matter of preference. But what I do believe in is I do believe in having something. I just believe in having a more power ratings-based look at the sport. In other words, not necessarily grading you based on merit, not necessarily grading you based on your win-loss record. What I came to care about a long time ago and what the JP poll is built to show is one thing and one thing only, and that's neutral field favorability. And that means even if you're 0-3 and I'm 3-0, you could be favored against me if we played Saturday, and that's all it means. Doesn't mean you'd beat me. Underdogs win every week. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. What we did is we tried to build a little different way to look at the game, to look at teams, to grade teams, to judge teams. And if you don't like it, my advice is don't partake in it, don't look at it. My advice is also to never think that this order of teams is how I would fill out a playoff bracket. If I were on the playoff committee, I say this a million times every year, the order I'm about to put these teams in, preseason or week 14, is not the order that I would put them in. I had SMU like in the low teens last year, and yet I sat on this show and said, I think they should be in the playoff. Different things, totally different things. I will say this as we're about to get into the JP poll. I have never seen teams as compacted at the top as I've seen. I'm going to give you some numbers a little bit later to show you relative to 10 years ago and even 5 and 6 years ago how tight the picture is, not just at the very top, but all the way down through like number 40 or number 45. It's a whole new world out there, which means more so than ever, you've probably got competitive balance. You've probably got parity. You've probably got the ability for 7-5 and 10-2 to be negligible in difference. And yet I don't think people actually believe that. So the one thing that I want everyone to remember as I get set to unveil the JP poll is it's not my fault. And if any of these teams don't live up to their preseason JP poll billing, it's because either one of three things happen. Either kids screwed up, or coaches screwed up, or officials screwed up. Because as we know, the JP poll's never been wrong about a team. To my knowledge, we've never gotten a prediction wrong on this show. We've either been right, or kids, coaches, or officials screwed it up. However, if we are right, I humbly and meekly request that you give us full credit. We want the credit. We don't want the blame. That is a totally fair proposition, at least in my opinion. So here we go. Neutral field favorability, that's the order here, nothing more, nothing less. If I filled out an AP poll, I may make it look different, but I don't have a vote in the AP, nor do I have a Heisman vote somehow. I guess I don't pay enough attention to this sport. Let's start it with number 20. Here we go. I'm going to put this graphic out later on the socials as well. I have got SMU at number 20. Rhett Lashley wants to be doubted. Well, the JP poll's doubting him. They finished number 12 in last year's poll. So I was a little bit low. Memory did not serve me correctly there. They finished 12th last year. Portal infusion here, specifically along the defensive line. I am watching the level of defensive play, or rather the model is, very closely. I looked at some of the red light indicators, and defense, obviously, with the attrition they had, is one of those. So SMU at 20. Kansas State, we got at number 19. This is the highest rated Big 12 team that the model has. I'm speaking of the model, and if you're new around here, that's this bad boy over here, this computer here, the model. These are not my ratings. This is the model. I can disagree with the model. I will several times over the next several minutes. Kansas State, yes, they are the highest rated Big 12 team. However, you should know there are 5 Big 12s. Well, the power rated version has 5 Big 12 teams within 3 points of each other. So it's very interchangeable. I cannot stress that enough with a lot of these teams. Very interchangeable. Tennessee's at number 18. I think the JP poll's higher on Tennessee than the AP was. There is admittedly some of the analogs that we go back in time and we judge a team against. Meaning, like, how does this team profile? What are some of the indicators that the model sees this team having that some teams in the past had? And you need to plug your ears for a second in Knoxville. One of the big analog indicators was Oklahoma last year for Tennessee this year. And what that means is the talent roster's pretty good. There may be a drop-off from Tennessee last year to Tennessee this year, but that's accounted for already with where they are. What the model's indicating is this is a team that has a disproportionately high risk of bombing at the quarterback position, and if they do, it renders the rest of the roster sort of irrelevant within the framework of rating them this high. Oklahoma was the same last year. We had Oklahoma, or the model had Oklahoma, number 12, preseason. But that was all contingent on Jackson Arnold being what it thought Jackson Arnold was going to be. Well, that's not the way it played out, famously. And so Oklahoma falls off a cliff. That could happen with Tennessee, or Josh Heupel could work his magic. And if they do, if they get B or better quarterback play, Tennessee's actually better than number 18. You're kind of splitting the difference if you're the model there. Number 17 is South Carolina. I somewhat disagree with this. This is my first slight disagreement with the model. I would have South Carolina probably a little bit higher. I got to tell you, what the model's seeing is that wide receiver room. and it doubts it. Past Nick Harbor, it doubts it. Now, I've spoken about that a few times on this show. Some of the feedback that we've gotten from Columbia is that wide receiver room is being slept on. Could be anecdotal. It could just be, it could be ripe grapes, which is the opposite of sour grapes, of course, and you really find those in plentiful supply in the preseason. But if they're right, and if their wide receiver room is good past Nick Harbor, then they're too low at 17, because they may have the best quarterback in the conference. They may have the best quarterback in the country. In fact, their dynamic nature at quarterback, Lenora Sellers by name, is enough to almost single-handedly lift them past 17. They're at 17 right now. If you disagree, take it up with the model. Don't take it up with me. I had no idea where the model would put Michigan, but we have our answer. It put Michigan at 16. Now, I don't think the model is even aware that the NCAA cloud is hovering over Michigan. I don't know how you would quantify that anyway. And so what we're looking at here is the level of defensive play. That's one of the biggest question marks in the old model about the level of play overall that you get from Michigan. It's contingent on that not dropping off a whole lot. It doesn't think it will. I may have doubts above and beyond that. I may have bigger doubts about that. But the model says, hey, it's Michigan. There's like a certain baseline defensive production level they think, or the model thinks it'll get. It's a tough team to peg. Is it sort of a 1 year away type team? Well, even if teams like Michigan are 1 year away, there's just not too far they're going to drop because of the level of talent, the level of athlete they're always going to have on their roster. So, I mean, you may doubt Michigan a whole lot more than having them ranked number 16, but power ratings-wise, there aren't like 20 or 25 teams that would be favored against Michigan right now. So that's what we're doing here. Number 15, I can't believe this. I can't believe we're in a place where just 2 years ago, one of the harshest allegations thrown our way was that we were a USC hater show. The model hated USC. The computer itself had a personal vendetta against USC. And my, how the tables have turned. Here we are with USC at number 15. Where are they in the AP, Jesse? I hear crickets. Oh, they're not. They're not even ranked. Well, they are power rated. The model does not see your win-loss record from last year. In fact, it never sees win-loss record. What it does see is they got one of the best defensive staffs in the country. Their level of play really scaled up last year. The model expects another healthy scale up this year. And I just want to float a scenario because I'm looking at some of the simulations the model is spitting out at us right now. There are worlds, believe it or not, where your Lincoln Riley-led USC Trojans win a game or two defensively. Gasp. You know what the analog for it is? Tennessee last year. They don't have the kind of defensive personnel that Tennessee had last year. But what I'm talking about is the inversion of a team profile. A Josh Heupel team would have been expected to be winning. If I told you, hey, Tennessee and Heupel are going to the playoffs last year, you would have thought fireworks. That's not how they got there. And similarly, if USC makes it this year, and a Lincoln Riley team's never going to totally sputter to a stall offensively, but the model thinks that D'Anton Lynn and company on the defensive side could carry them at times for stretches if needed. Line of scrimmage talent both sides has progressed, and therefore from a neutral field favorability rating, what a world. We got USC number 15. I'm sure that won't create any discussion whatsoever. We got Ole Miss at number 14. The model's very high on Austin Simmons, to the point that I think there may be relation between Austin Simmons and the model. I mean, the model looks at Austin Simmons the way that an uncle would look at Austin Simmons. I don't know what the model knows. It does expect a defensive drop-off. If you're wondering why Ole Miss is not higher than this, it's always tough to get a gauge on the portal-reliant teams, but also it expects a defensive drop-off. I mean, they were top 5 in a lot of the critical metrics last year. It does not expect Ole Miss to be a top 5 defensive team in any of those critical metrics this year, but are they going to be number 8 or 28? Don't know. That's why it's the preseason and all this is written in pencil. Number 13, disagreement part 2. Texas A&M is number 13. And I think that's a little low. I would have them a little higher than that. It is well known around Austin, Texas, that I am a card-carrying Aggie. Everybody knows that. It's not actually true, but I do that hit on Texags every week, and I am not perennially hating on their traditions. Therefore, grading on the college football bell curve that makes you an Aggie homer. I have no question about their identity, and so I would be higher than the model on A&M. The model is low on Marcel Reed. That's the problem here, if you wonder why they're not rated higher. Model thinks that Marcel Reed has a certain level of play that he'll give out this year. I think a little bit higher, and it's not necessarily Reed alone. I think their vertical passing game will be a little bit better than it was last year, and that's sort of feedback from camp. So I got an unfair advantage there because the model doesn't have any friends. You think the model knows Colin Klein? You think the model knows Billy Lucci? I think Lucci knows everyone, so I think Lucci probably has hung out with the model or a model a time or two. I don't know what rumors you've heard. I know which ones I've heard. And the model thinks that still there is a little bit of a suspect nature about Texas A&M defensively, whereas I am bathing in the Kool-Aid. Once Mike Elko starts banging his fist on the table and says, don't worry about it, I got the defense, I trust him. So I'm a little bit higher on A&M than the model is. LSU at 12. It's a very, very tough thing to process the kind of team that LSU is for the model. So what we have baked in here is we have examples of several teams that have gone heavy portal for their starting two deep, at least. Starting two deep is kind of counter. But you get what I'm saying. FSU did that in 2023 and won the ACC. That's baked into this thing. FSU 2024 is also baked into this thing. So you can't just blindly distrust or blindly trust all of the additions. Now, I got to tell you, I do trust that they made the right moves. This is a power rating for where they are starting the season. It's not predictive at all. So it's not predicting what LSU will be in week 6 or 9 or 12. It's what are they starting the season at? And I think it's very fair, the more I looked at it, to expect them to be in the 10 to 15 range starting out, even if you think they're going to win the SEC. You certainly can't think they're going to start on fire. That is atypical of what Brian Kelly has been and what LSU has been over the last half decade. So if they do it, that'll just mean they turn the profile on its ear. And that's not what it sees happening. LSU at number 12. Now, I will tell you this, looking at some of the simulations, this is a huge spike potential team. Because if we're wrong and they do start hot, let's say they go into Clemson, they beat Clemson 27-20. I'd expect LSU to jump pretty significantly after just 1 week, even though in this thing you don't normally see huge knee-jerk reaction. If that happened, LSU would have knocked away one of the huge pillars of doubt that the model has. And so let's keep an eye on it. Miami is at number 11. The model and me both love the line of scrimmage personnel, both sides on this team. There's a decent to good grade on Carson Beck. What the model still wants to see, and I got to agree with it. Good job, buddy. I got to agree with it here. What it wants to see is you lost half a dozen of your top pass catchers. What do you have there? And number 2, yeah, you got a new defensive coordinator. Solid upgrade in terms of staff grade. What do you have in the defensive backfield? What do you have? That's just a pregnant pause for a reason. Now, there are some indications that one of the best players on that team overall may be in that defensive back room. But do you have a defensive back room, or do you just have a player or two? Because you put 3 or 4 receivers on the field at the time, you can easily look past that. Miami at 11. I'm told no disagreement so far. Because if there were disagreements, I would hear it, and I don't hear anything. I don't hear a single thing. This is where it'll start if it hasn't already. We don't have. The model has Oklahoma at number 10. The wide receiver room, well, the whole offense was a disaster last year. But specifically, I'll tell you what the model thinks. The model thinks the wide receiver room got overhauled effectively. I tend to agree. I'm not even that far apart with the model on Oklahoma. Wide receiver room expecting a big production spike. Deion Burke's healthy and beyond him. They went and got good players there. Now, here's where there's a little separation. The old computer here is just believing in the offensive line out in Norman. I'm looking at practice reports. I'm hearing the hoofbeats as I put my ear to the ground. There's still a lot of mixing and matching. There's still a lot of rotation. Are we going to start a freshman at tackle, by the way? Someone's got to tell me that. Yeah, someone text Jim Nagy. He's got to be watching practice. Are we going to do that? So, I quarterback, offensive coordinator, yes. Love what they did. defense should be conservatively a top 15 unit. Yes. I'm very high on this team. They're just a couple of things. Really, the offensive line. If you could ease my concerns about that, I'd be all in. Oklahoma 10. The model's not talking about schedule. I do want to make sure I note that. I know some of you, when you do your predictions, when you do your rankings, you factor in schedule. There is nothing to do with schedule here. That's why this is not predictive either. It's just static, in the same room, comparative neutral field favorability. Oklahoma 10, Florida's at 9. I told you I probably have both of these teams' top 10 power ratings because I've been looking at the computer, working its way through processing all summer, and I saw what it was spitting out, and here it is. So Florida, number 9. This is with a healthy DJ Lagway. Obviously, without him healthy, they fall off a cliff. So don't come at me with that. This is with a healthy DJ Lagway baked in. There are reasons to be extremely high on their offensive line, extremely high on their tailback position, which is also why they are one of the most dynamic teams in the country. And you get bonus points for that with the model's way of looking at college football, because it looks and it says, okay, this is Florida with a healthy DJ Lagway. There are scenarios where Lagway gets hurt. And while it would not have Florida at number 9, it wouldn't drop Florida maybe as far as you would think, because it says, I think they could win a game 19-16 if they need to, because they can run the ball, and they should be able to steamroll with that offensive line. And the defensive personnel should be able to win a slugfest and hold them in contention until DJ Lagway gets back, as opposed to a team that profiles as one where the quarterback has to carry it. That's not how Florida profiles. It's a really dynamic team. The floor is high because of that. The schedule's brutal, but there's nothing about schedule baked into this. Florida at 9. Model has Clemson at number 8. Huge grades on head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback continuity. Yes. Defensive coordinator is upgraded. Yes. It's a veteran roster. Yes. We need to remember that while I'm pretty sure the AP ranked Clemson higher than this, you got to understand depth is not necessarily what you were used to a few years ago. And while depth is not the absolute number one metric graded here, it is graded. And the depth piece at Clemson is a little bit off the pace of maybe some of the teams ahead of them. Not much. I told you the top is very compacted here. So 1 or 2 points is the difference between you being 8 and you being 4. But we got Clemson at 8 here. Oregon is number 7. And someone's going to look at that and say, oh, that's just because you're baking in a ton of recruiting ranking stuff. Yeah, absolutely we are. Absolutely we are. I would challenge you to go talk to any bookmaker and say, for all the teams like Oregon, Ohio State, Ohio State being favored against Texas, how could you know that? Well, we know it because we have a certain value that we give talent acquisition. How else are you going to guess on teams in the preseason? That's all this is, by the way, is a guess. There is blind benefit of the doubt that's going to be given to pretty much every team I list from here on out. Oregon's one of them. The Evan Stewart injury is baked into this. Model knows that he's out for the foreseeable future. Need Dante Moore to verify. It is counting on a pretty solid, high production, high floor kind of ceiling or high floor kind of season, rather, from Dante Moore. The style is what's interesting. So the model sees just a flat-out different style of Oregon this year. Maybe a little bit lower scoring, maybe a little more ground and pound, maybe a little more complimentary, just because of the different nature. I mean, it does not think that the wide receiver room is nearly to the level that maybe it has been in years past. Just something interesting to watch there. Got Notre Dame at number 6. Real solid roster. So it's a very high floor team as well. Now, the quarterback battle is ongoing. And whoever wins that is whoever wins that. That's what's keeping them at 6, I think. But the upside is capped. Until we know that, the upside's capped. Now, what's interesting is total inverse from Oregon. The model thinks Notre Dame's got its best wide receiver room in quite a while. Do you got the guy that can get him the ball? Got Notre Dame at number 6, because if you can't get him the ball, it's not the end of the world. You play solid defense. You got a really good ground game. Notre Dame at 6. Alabama's number 5. And I don't know what my ranking on Bama would be. I may have them slightly higher than that. Not much higher than that. But I could interchange a lot of these teams at the top right now. Really, one of the best rosters in the country. The model is questioning offensive balance with Alabama, which is understandable because they sucked running the ball last year by their standard. And so, I've listened to them talk a lot about how they love what Jam Miller's given them. And really, they like their tailback room pretty good there. They like their offensive line. But you know what? They did last year. And it was non-existent. Offensive balance was non-existent. Now, a lot of that will be rectified because of a more dependable presence at quarterback. Not meaning Ty Simpson makes the high-level plays that Jalen Milroe does, but Ty Simpson's a more consistent player than Jalen Milroe was. And that makes it a whole lot easier to execute a game plan week in and week out, have a lot more of an identity. And that's probably where you, along with the addition of Ryan Grubb at offensive coordinator, commit to the ground game a little bit more. DB and wide receiver room's pretty incredible here. So Ty Simpson got named the starting quarterback there. If that comes together, Bama's too low at 5. But because of those concerns, we got Bama 5. We got Penn State at number 4, which is significant because the highest they were at any point last year was 5. So this opens Penn State higher at a power rating, not ranking, power rating than they were at any point last year. And it's very simple. The wide receiver additions, that's what the model saw. Elsewhere, the team's pretty much the team. And so, it's very, very straightforward. Some of this stuff you have to explain. You don't have to explain much with Penn State. Good team, loaded team, best shot they've had in a while, more dynamic players in that wide receiver room. We'll see. Number 3, Georgia. As you may remember, back in spring, I put out my own personal post-spring rankings. Like the only time I've ever done that. I had Georgia outside the top 10, I think 11. Not far outside the top 10. I just had a lot of questions about him. I still do. But I told you when the JP poll comes out in the fall, Georgia will not be close to number 11. They'll be closer to number 1 than number 11, and lo and behold, they are. Talent, staff. One of the best talent rosters in the country, one of the best coaching staffs in the country, maybe the best coaching staff in the country. There's just such a high floor. It is so hard in a power rating format for Georgia to be lower than 5th. Like, they can lose multiple games. We're talking about who they would and wouldn't be favored against the following week. There's just hardly anyone that would be favored over Georgia. By the model's estimation, 2 teams would be favored neutral field over Georgia. Ohio State's one of them. Do you believe that, by the way? They played in Nashville tomorrow or week 1. Who do you think would be favored? Well, the model would favor Ohio State by like 0.2 of a point. Again, like Georgia, talent and staff. Doesn't matter if all the players are new. Their new starters, their first-year players are a different breed of player than most of your first-year players. And I'm going to say that about number 1 in a second, too. Week 1 versus week 6 is important to note with them. With these teams that are ultra-high talent level, but they're breaking in new players, they tend to scale their performance pretty precipitously throughout the year. So the version of them in week 1 against Texas, they may win or lose by 13 points. Look at them in week 6. The defensive line drop-off, by the way, is a moderate concern for the model. The number 1 team in the country, according to the model, JP poll number 1 preseason team. Congratulations to Steve Sarkisian. Congratulations to Brandon Harris and the entire personnel department out there. I know that more than a national championship itself, this is what you guys have been gunning for. To be rated number 1 in the preseason JP poll, Texas has done it. What do we have for them? I'm sure we got a trophy somewhere. There is such a level of blind trust that the model has in Texas. It's almost egregious. This is not a this year thing. The model has been drunk on Texas for a long time, and it could not pass. It could not pass many field sobriety tests right now in the analytics world when it comes to the way it views Texas. But I'm told that the coaches poll and the AP poll is kind of the same. It's a power roster. Remember, we were out there in the spring, and, if you're looking from the outside, you see, they got to replace a lot of players. Sark didn't bat an eye. He told us, we've got challenges, but we've been building towards this year. These are all of our guys now, whole buildings full of our guys. We got Arch Manning. This is now his year. We've been building towards this year. So it's no surprise that they enter at number 1. We got number 1 versus number 2 to start the year, by the way. Number 1 versus number 2 there in Columbus, Ohio. All right, some things I want to tell you as you look at the preseason JP poll 1 through 10. They're on your screen. The gap between number 1 and number 8 was under 5 points. I don't know when we've ever seen that. The gap between number 9 and number 22 is 5 points. I don't know when we've ever seen that. And the gap between number 21 and 43 is 5 points, which means there will be people who unnecessarily get bent out of shape. Their team was 27th and they think they should be 21st. You're not even disagreeing with me. The difference there is 1.25 points. A slight breeze of 5 miles an hour to the east affects your special teams and is worth 1.25 points in a game. So, do more defined tiers start to form as the season goes on? Or is it like that the whole year? If it's like that the whole year, I'm telling you, I've never seen a season that profiles as a 2007 repeat more so than what I'm looking at on these pieces of paper right now. Because if the field stays this compacted, I'm just telling you, you're going to have upset after upset after upset. You're going to have chaos and anarchy, not just in the top, 25, but in the top 5 to 10. I remember the stats in 2007. Maybe we need to revisit that for some of our younger viewers who they were, I guess, probably alive, but they don't remember it. 2007 was like its own movie. Maybe we've got it about to happen again. And we'll be on the road all fall. You know why? Because we are powered and fueled by Quick Trip. We are proud to partner with them. They've been with us for over a year now. In every way, they fuel us. Cold brew on tap to fuel you as a human. Various forms of gasoline to fuel your vehicle. Various snacks to fuel your hunger. And very, very personable staff to fuel your social needs. Also, is there a better logo? Some would say yes, and you're wrong. That's not even a matter of opinion. That's not on a prompter. We don't own a teleprompter. I'm just telling you, that's a beautiful logo. It's a beautiful partner, a beautiful place to be. We love Quick Trip and Academy. We'll talk about them later in the show. And they will yet again fuel our adventures this fall on a tour that will be named in the next few days. Okay, fall intel. Bradley, that's a poor intro, so I'll give you a better one here for you to clip this video later. Fall camps are going on all across the country. Some of the latest scoop, some of the latest whispers and intel we're getting. Let me start at Oklahoma. I know that the internet has been abuzz over the past 24 hours with this whole John Mateer Venmo sports betting scandal. And whomst amongst us has never been caught up in one of those. But I have great news. It's over. It's over because he put a statement out on Twitter. And I don't know if you're familiar with the legal process, but once you put a statement on Twitter, it's done. So I'm happy. Like, my questions have been answered. Real talk, I don't think this is going to be a big issue. You can think what you want about it. Everyone's got an opinion on it. I'm just saying I don't think it's going to be a big issue. And 2 weeks from now, I don't think many people will be talking about it. But I didn't comment on it last night because I don't have a clue what the truth is, other than the statement on Twitter. But I will say about Oklahoma's fall camp so far, defense ahead of the offense. Not the biggest breaking news. That's the case at a lot of places. The difference is I think the offense will be okay here. The interior of this defensive line is a big plus. They got really 3 sophomores that we're looking at that we keep hearing good stuff about. One of them's like Reggie Powers and Devin Jordan at DB, but Jaden Jackson at defensive line. There are players that look like they're supposed to look at Oklahoma. There are players that can take over games here. There's still, on the other side, a lot of rotation at offensive line, which I don't necessarily love, but that's what God invented fall camp for, as Mimo always taught me. I don't know if you've read the papers, got a pretty good offensive line coach out there. So we think they'll get that figured out. But just a question. Are you guys going to start a true freshman at tackle? 5 stars, but true freshman? Let's just keep an eye on that. Notre Dame, quarterback battle still going on. I will admit, I thought this would be settled by now. So I was wrong about this. And I am wrong in the sense that I thought in the spring C.J. Carr would lock this job down. Now, maybe he will. In fact, I think he eventually will, but I don't know. It's still neck and neck. So it could be Kenny Minchie. It could be C.J. Carr. I'm just saying what I hope doesn't happen here is that thing lingers and no one really grabs the job and they waste what should be a really, really upgraded wide receiver room. So that's what we're watching for there. They hit on Will Pauling, kid out of Wisconsin. Malachi Fields out of Virginia. They got a good receiver room, man. Like, they feel really good about it. I feel really good about it. That plus Faison and Greathouse, who were already there. I mean, this is a drastically upgraded wide receiver room. We're saying that about Penn State, but I'm saying it about Notre Dame too. And I feel really good about corner, linebacker. There's a lot to feel good about with Notre Dame. Quarterback battle still going on. Now remember, one of the big lies they tell in college football sometimes is if you got two quarterbacks, you don't have any. Because sometimes that's a lie. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes it really is that no one's emerged. I don't think that's the case here. And for the record, I'm still calling Carr. I still think C.J. Carr will win this job. But until they make an announcement, and there's some rumors here and there that we may have an announcement soon, but until they make an announcement, it's a coin flip. FSU, as you may recall last year, Florida State sucked water through a garden hose offensively. Again, as Meemaw would say. They were 131st in offensive points per game. What do we got, 135 or 6 teams? So, glass half full is it could have been worse. Not much worse. And then in comes Gus Malzahn. And I am convinced that some of you do recognize the offseason to the point where it is breaking news to you when I tell you, did you know Gus Malzahn's not the head coach at Central Florida anymore? Did you know he's the offensive coordinator at FSU? That really happened while you were irresponsibly spending time with your wife and your family, or while you were enrolled in summer courses to try and get ahead on your academic track and you weren't paying attention to spring ball and you weren't paying attention to summer workouts like you should have been doing. Yeah, Gus Malzahn took the FSU job. So they also got Tommy Castellanos, which is a tough last name to say, especially if you dabbled in Spanish a semester or two like I did. But you're going to get, based on the feedback we're getting from FSU's fall camp, which is tough to come by, trust me, you're going to get some pop plays with him. You're not going to pair a player of his profile with Gus Malzahn and not have some wow moments. But I'm telling you what I think you will have is you'll have some facepalm moments. Consistency is the name of the game, and I don't know that I can count on it from them offensively out of the gate. They were 12 for 50 on passes of 20-plus yards in the air last year. 3 touchdowns, 5 picks. They feel better about the offensive line. We'll see on that, but they're going to have like anywhere between 6 and 8 true freshmen in their 2 deep. Boggs probably going to start at wide receiver, probably their 3rd wide receiver. It's just they got to face Bama out of the gate. I really wish they didn't. I really wish they had East Texas A&M, Kent State, and just throw Bama somewhere later in the year. Or don't play them. Adopt the SEC scheduling model, as some people in rural Indiana call it. But they got to face Bama out the gate. I don't like the matchup. I just hope it's not the kind of game. I hope Mike Norvell was right in what he said to us when we went down there in the spring, because he was on the show and he said, I think we made the right moves. I think we got the right people in the building. And I believe that he believes that. He wasn't BSing us. But then you got to play the games. And if you're competitive with Bama, win or loss, if you're competitive, everyone believes. But after last year, $1 million question around there is how mentally tough is Florida State football? And that's up to Mike Norvell and his staff, but ultimately it's up to those players. Because if it doesn't go your way in week 1, you got 11 more of them. And you died as a team last year, and you can't have that happen 2 years in a row. So the consistency thing, that's the big question there. What about Oregon? It's going to be Dante Moore at quarterback. I'm going to go up there later this week, actually. I don't think I've said anything about that. I don't think I'm supposed to say anything about it. But, yeah, it's going to be Dante Moore's job, I think. But the good news is Austin Novosad has really pushed here. And I don't think it's because Dante Moore's been terrible or anything like that. They just acquire good quarterback talent up there. Now, here's what I'm wondering about Oregon, and here's what I keep asking about. Evan Stewart's out of the picture for a little while. Tess Johnson's gone. Do they have the wide receiver personnel to backfill? And I don't know that they do. They're not going to be like just completely porous at the wide receiver position, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. If you watch Oregon, Bradley, do me a favor. If you got their schedule, throw it up. If you don't, it's okay. But I wouldn't be surprised when you watch Oregon this year if you didn't say, wow, man, that offensive profile, that offensive identity feels a little different. It just may have to be that way. You may not have the game records out wide that you normally have. And that's even if we can count on Dante Moore to get the ball to him. Probably less 11 personnel. I mean, listening to Will Stein, the offensive coordinator, talk about that, edge room is really good here. DB feel pretty good here. So good returns so far. It may be they got to win different ways. That may be the case. Fall intel is great. Love it. I'm going to be on the road. Man, I've got a really aggressive travel schedule coming up. I'm going to see 3 different camps, a couple of scrimmages over the next few days. Yep. As much as we can talk about on air, we'll talk about. Some of these places are like Alcatraz. So you have to sign a blood oath and then cover your mouth with duct tape and turn in your keys and your cell phone. That's okay. At least we get out on the road and get some sun. Let's move on. Happy to have you all with us. Remember, as I contribute to the live chat there, we do this show all year. I know some of you watch just during the season, which to that I say, why? What else do you have to do in February? Valentine's Day? Make sure you subscribe to the channel. That's it. That's really the only request. I mean, it's free. It doesn't change anything for you. It just helps me put food on the table for Bradley. Really, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. If you don't like me, that's okay. Don't you want to feed Bradley? For just one subscription, you can feed a director tonight. Several of you need to subscribe to feed a director tonight, or else it's Hormel again for Bradley. He deserves better. The AP poll has dropped. The JP poll has dropped. So naturally, I thought it wise to take some time on the show tonight and look at the fact that every AP voter should be fired. Why? Because I'm not one. I don't think I would take on the role if they offered, but they have not offered. And so until then, this poll is our mortal enemy. We've never really agreed with it all that much. For the record, there it is. If you're listening on podcasts, don't worry, you're not missing much. The SEC and the Big Ten have 14 of the top 20 teams. So every time someone blames me and calls me a homer, hey, I got nothing to do with this. It's them. It's them. It's not me. It's them. Shame on them. We just have full trust in Texas. Everybody does. Well, not so fast, because the AP had 6 different teams get first place votes. Now, Texas was number 1, but 6 different teams got first place votes. For the record, Boise is the highest ranked G5 team. They're 25. I don't think it's by accident they're 25. I think they looked around and said, we need a G5 team to be ranked. Who is it? Boise. Put them 25. This is, of course, wrong. So let's go through this and let's just compare what the AP thinks about these teams versus the JP poll. Now, these are 2 different things that we're trying to accomplish here. The AP is trying to rank teams. They care about merit. Half of them are probably trying to predict with their rankings. We're not doing that with the JP poll. So, yes, we are trying to accomplish different things. But like, for instance, Clemson. Clemson's ranked 4th to start the season. Well, we had them 8th in the JP poll. Georgia was 5th in the AP. Well, we're higher on them. But I do understand if someone's a little lower than 3rd, like the JP poll is, on Georgia. Oklahoma and Florida, we're going to be higher on them because I truly believe a lot of these pollsters are baking in their predictions, or they're baking in how tough their schedules are. How that affects the quality of team you have, I will never know. If you want to do season predictions, just do season predictions. Why would you do that with your ranking? I digress. Illinois is 12th in the AP poll. We don't have them rated in the top 20 in the JP poll. I'll explain myself in a second. One of the most random accusations ever thrown our way is we hate Illinois. It boggles my mind how I could ever grow to hate Illinois. I know Tom Fornelli. I've been to the state several times. I have chased tornadoes in Illinois. How much more connected could I be to a state? Texas A&M, AP poll is higher than the JP poll. USC, the AP poll doesn't even have USC ranked. I was very surprised by this because as far as I know, doesn't the esteemed college football media look for every reason to give benefit of the doubt to USC? Have you people turned on Lincoln Riley this much? 30th? You got 29 teams better than USC. I think not. That's insanity. So let me talk about a couple of teams here. Clemson. Even though the JP poll has Clemson at number 8, I completely understand how you would have them ranked higher because I'd have them ranked higher. Remember, Jesse, in my post-spring rankings, I think I had Clemson number 1. So I get it because that's merit and that's what you expect to happen. Does the roster top the rosters of Penn State or Bama or Ohio State or Georgia? The answer is no from a raw talent perspective. So then the next question is, forget about talent level because Clemson doesn't lack for talent. Even if they're a couple of points off, are they a better team than those teams? And that may very well be the case. Statement win against LSU week 1, maybe as well. USC, the close losses, they're being punished for. Meaning that they had the most famous stat of 2025 so far is that USC led 5 Big Ten games that they lost last year in the fourth quarter. Not ideal. That's not the system. That's not part of the game plan. Well, the AP voters looked at that and said, we're not giving you benefit of the doubt until you earn it. That's okay. But 30th? USC is way too low. Like, there is no world where there are 29 teams better than USC this year. I just refuse to believe it. JP Poll's got him 15. I could see him higher than 15. There is some disagreement in the building between myself and the model and certain other citizens attached to our staff, but that's okay. I just think the defense is going to keep scaling up. And I don't think people are appreciating it because I think the world doesn't even associate defense with Lincoln Riley teams. And if you're going off history, you're right to do that. I just think it's a little bit of a new day around Lincoln Riley's program in that sense. At Illinois, week 5 is their game of the year. You will never convince me otherwise. That is the gateway to either great success or crushing failure this year. Speaking of Illinois, now, I'm going to try and be responsible in how I explain this. It will fall on deaf ears. It doesn't matter. Illinois is the classic ranking versus rating team because Illinois is ranked 12th. If I had an AP ballot, I'd have them right there in the 10 to 15 range. They deserve it. They finished last year strong. Almost all of that team returns. They're very, very solid. In a power rating-based model, there are well over 12 teams that would be favored against Illinois if they play tomorrow. Brett Bielema could walk in this room right now, and he would say, wasn't South Carolina favored against us? Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure they were. Didn't we beat them? Yep. What now? I don't know. What point are you trying to make, Brett? Or any Illinois fan that is inevitably going to come at me with this. I think Connolly had him, 19th or 20th? My point is, so we had him 26th. The JP poll has him 26th, meaning it would favor 25 teams against him on a neutral field. You can disagree with that. That's fine. My point is, whether you got him 26 or 19, there's like a 2-point difference between 26 and 19 in the model right now. It is not merit-based, and it's not predictive. So that's the difference in power rating Illinois in the 20s versus ranking them in the high teens. If I ranked them, they wouldn't be 26th. They'd be a lot closer to 12th. Or, alternate theory, I hate them. I think we're going to run with theory number 2. I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to run with theory number 2. But I'm at Arizona State every other week, and I've got them lower than the AP as well. Do I hate Kenny Dillingham? How could you hate Kenny Dillingham? How could you hate that face? That is a face. Some people say, oh, you got a face only a mother could love. Kenny Dillingham's got a face that everyone's mother could love, and father and son and daughter. Everyone loves Kenny Dillingham. So why, in the wide world of college football, would I have them lower than the AP? Well, the reason is, again, their roster doesn't measure up talent for talent with some of these higher level teams. But last year it didn't either. And last year it didn't matter because they ended up being a better team. They probably played much higher than the sum of their individual parts was much better than the parts themselves would indicate it should be. Here's what I think the JP poll, the rating system over here is missing. and that is their staff returns totally intact, and that's a really underrated staff. So, I actually disagree with the JP poll. I do think Arizona State should be higher, even from a power rating perspective. Illinois, you could argue semantically 26 versus 21 or 20. I think Arizona State should definitively be higher. The SEC as a whole, the JP poll is going to have a lot of them higher. Is that because the JP poll is in the tank for the SEC? No, it's because it really values talent acquisition, and a lot of the SEC rosters are more loaded with talent than some of the others. High levels of the Big Ten are as well. So you might ask, well, doesn't that overrank them? No, not per se, but also what you have to account for is they do play each other. So, if, let's say, Georgia and Alabama play tomorrow, well, they're both consensus top 10 teams. One of them is going to be 0-1 after that. Does that make them worse than 20 other teams, or does it just mean that's a byproduct of two top 10 teams playing each other? Anyway, my point is there's going to be like Tennessee, Ole Miss, A&M, Oklahoma, Florida. JP polls higher on all of them than the AP is. There are two SEC teams the JP poll is lower than the AP on, and that's South Carolina and LSU. And that's fascinating. It's fascinating because I think a lot of people have in their minds with South Carolina, they just missed out on a playoff spot last year. They had two games that really could have gone their way that would have made them like a top 5 seed. That's last year, though. So there's very little carryover to that. And also with LSU, a lot of people have talked themselves into LSU. And it's not that there's a huge gap between the AP poll at 9 and the JP poll at 12. I just, as I said earlier in the show, I'm questioning how high a level LSU opens at. I got no doubt if they win early games, they're going to be off to the races. They're a prime national championship contender. Can they start fast? Because that LSU schedule is on your screen right now, and I just want to remind you the classic pre-Halloween stat that we keep around here. How many losable games do you play before Halloween? They play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 losable games before Halloween. And they got Bama and Oklahoma after Halloween. So you better have your affairs in order early. The AP poll. Not our enemy, just not our friend, per se. We do have friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors, though. They do not vote in the AP. They do not vote in the JP. But they are friends of ours. And, candidly, it's the time of year where a lot of you are getting excited. A lot of you have your tailgating spots already picked out. A lot of you are also going to be out at the ball fields in the fall because the little ones are playing all form of fall sports. That's okay, as long as you have your Academy fold-out chair, or your Academy or canopy tents, or your grills, or any of a number of different tailgating/recreational pieces, items that you need. They've got it at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Always have, always will. They got your Big League Chew. Doesn't sound like it fits in the basket with the rest of those things. Okay, well, we'll put a wad of great Big League Chew in your cheek and then tell me that. It just makes you feel like a better person. If you can't get there in person, that's okay. Academy.com has you covered. But try and get there in person. And trust me. And again, as I always say, tell them we sent you. All right, we've been previewing some teams. I'm going to take a sip of water right quick. Nondescript water here. No water company sponsoring the show. So this plastic BPH-free bottle is what we go with. Tennessee is a tough team to predict. I got to be honest with you, man. I'm really conflicted on Tennessee. And yet I'm going to try and predict their season here right quick. To set the table, of course, they're coming off a playoff appearance. Josh Heupel has saved this program. He pulled them all the way out of the ditch, and they're back up on the main road. High road? I don't know. They're on the main road, though. What is the energy around this program in December, though? Because it's a very, very interesting case study. The whole Nico drama happened, and Josh Heupel put his foot down. Nico's gone, and the fan base was very proud of him. They should have been. I would have been if I were a Tennessee fan as well. All I'm saying is, if it's 7-5 or 8-4 at the end of the season, do you have that same energy? We'll see. Some of the biggest questions with this team this year, of course, first and foremost, what do they get from the quarterback position? I think a couple of things. First thing I think is I think Joey Aguilar will eventually be QB1 for this team. But I also think that's not decided right now. And Merklinger's still in this. McIntyre probably not. But like, there's still a legit quarterback battle going on here, which is not the biggest shock in the world. You brought a guy in from UCLA by way of App State who didn't even know he was going to be a Tennessee Volunteer as late as spring. So, yeah, he hadn't locked down the job yet. Josh Heupel, quarterbacks normally don't have issues with turnovers. He has in the past. Now, it could be that there's a reason Heupel quarterbacks don't have a big turnover issue. His system is conducive to them not turning the ball over. So you may take a turnover-prone player like Joey Aguilar, and maybe in Heupel's system, that problem is eradicated. Or maybe it's not. That's why it's a question. Does the offensive line give them a chance? When we were there even last year, if you're asking the staff about next year's team, offensive line was always a concern. They knew it. It's not something that snuck up on them. They had a good run game last year. They lost 160, I think, starts off of the offensive line alone last year. Again, they knew it was coming. So it's not some problem that's just reared its head unsuspectingly in fall camp. They just got to work around it. They just got to be good enough there. This is not going to be a Joe Moore Award contender. They got to be good enough there. Can they lean on the D again? Immunity. Because defense carried them last year. It wasn't offense. Again, I think last year is painfully misremembered by the general college football public because you think Josh Heupel, Tennessee, made the playoff. They must have been a pinball offense. No, dude, they got shut out a bunch of first halves, and the game was still there to win because of Tim Banks and his defense. I expect a little regression in production level defensively, and either I'm wrong or I'm right, but it's mild, or I'm right and it's severe. I don't think it'll be severe. But how much is the regression if that is the case? They were 7th in defensive points per game allowed last year. I don't think that'll be the case this year. They were 6th in yards per game allowed. You're just asking a lot of rotational players from last year to play like meaningful starting roles this year. That's college football. That's the way it is every year. But they've really, I think, got to overachieve for defense to just be able to carry them to the degree they did last year. What's the best position group on this team? Got a lot of different answers. I asked around Tennessee circles. Some people said corner. If Dramad is healthy, yeah. I looked at tight end, and I'm rolling the dice a little bit here. I'm kind of guessing how they'll have to go about it, but they need tight end to come through. Miles Kitzelman and Ethan Davis, pretty solid 1-2. It's not the Georgia tight end room, but they're a pretty solid 1-2. But I just think that with the drop-off maybe a little bit at wide receiver, at the very least inexperience in the system at quarterback, I think tight end is going to be very heavily incorporated in this passing game this year, and they need those guys to come through. Now, the breakout player, actually, I think will be Mike Matthews if he's healthy. There's a lot of if healthy with Tennessee right now. He's a former 5-star wide receiver. He's got a big opportunity on his plate right now. Like, someone's got to step up at wide receiver. And so if he's healthy, I think Mike Matthews may be the guy who breaks out. Now, as for schedule, Tennessee got a big break. I mean, a big break. We have this graded as the easiest schedule in the SEC this year. Their road games, like when you have to go on the road in the SEC, you want it to be Mississippi State. It's not that it's easy. It's that, relatively speaking, that's one of the more manageable road trips you could ever have. At Kentucky, ditto. I also think, I don't think Tennessee measures up to Bama or Florida this year. Just candidly, I don't. So if you're going to play them, burn a couple of your road games playing them. Because I had those chalked up as L's anyway. They do get Georgia at home early, and that one could be a season definer. Because if it's competitive, that's one thing. If it's a blowout, and even if you've avoided disaster against Syracuse, that's probably what sets the season on the trajectory it will be set on. The model spat out 9-3 is the best case scenario for Tennessee. I think 10-2 is the best case. But the model's saying no, there's a lower ceiling on this team this year. And that's probably because of quarterback uncertainty, obviously. I just think in the best of worlds, quarterback pans out okay. And therefore, I think it should be 10-2. The model says otherwise. It thinks 9-3. It thinks the worst case is 4-8. That just means you lose all your losable games. So, like you lose Georgia, Arkansas, Bama, Oklahoma, Florida, Vandy. That would also make those road trips at Mississippi State and Kentucky are not gimmies. So it sees 4-8 as worst case. The most likely record that the model paints for Tennessee is 7-5. It has them going 7-5 this year. So I go back to the point I started with. If you feel like your program is in a good place, can you swallow a 7-5, 8-4 season? I think maybe the answer is yes. They're not happy about it, but I think the answer may be yes. They're watching us in Huntsville, Alabama. Oh, they're watching us in St. Paul, Minnesota. They're watching us in Tyler, Texas. We appreciate it. All right, it's a part of the show that many of you have tuned in for, but I don't think you're going to get what you showed up for. Bradley, here's your endpoint. Ryan from Omaha, Nebraska hit me and he said, "You've been teasing us with your preseason Heisman pick. I need to know who it is so I can tail you. Thanks." Well, many of you saw on July 29th when we were on our little hiatus, our technical induced hiatus, that I said something about the Heisman. There's the tweet right there. I said, "I figured out my Heisman winner this morning. I've placed my bet." And so with that in mind, I would like to make an announcement that a lot of you have been waiting for since the start of this show. I have an announcement, breaking news about John Mateer, Oklahoma quarterback, and sports betting. And the breaking news about John Mateer, Oklahoma quarterback, and sports betting has nothing to do with Venmo. It actually has nothing to do with him placing any bet. It has to do with the fact that I, Joshua D. Pate, have bet John, fill in the blank, don't know his middle name, Mateer, to win the Heisman Trophy this year. And I have placed a substantial amount of money on this, and I did not do it via Venmo. I did it the old-fashioned way, FanDuel, which I recommend. A lot of people ought to look into that. There are doubters, obviously, about John Mateer. Some people doubt his level of competition before he got here, with good reason. Played glorified Mountain West teams last year. Some of them question his mechanics. Okay. I am telling you that I don't doubt him at all. I think he could be a game wrecker in the SEC. So I've got many reasons why I believe in him. But did you know that Cam Ward and then after him John Mateer last year looked very, very similar statistically? In fact, Mateer led the country in total touchdowns last year. He's a great runner that you don't see a lot in the highlight film. Great runner. But anyway, here's why I'm high on him. I think that Oklahoma, I think they have a couple of early opportunities. Michigan comes in town week 2. Auburn comes in town a couple of weeks later. They got great opportunities at home for him to shine. They got an opportunity to be 5-0 when they go play Texas. I think they will be 5-0 when they go play Texas, at which point the talk is no longer Brent Venables' hot seat or will this Washington State transfer pan out? Who is Ben Arbuckle? You'll know that quarterback's a stud, that offensive coordinator's a stud, Brent Venables is holding it down on defense, and that leads us to the Red River Shootout, a game known by no name other than that on this show, where you've got John Mateer against the Heisman Trophy favorite. And at that point, our balls are in his court. At that point, it's up to him to show out that day. Now, it may be that they beat Texas, and at that point, it's a runaway train. It may be that they lose to Texas and get blown out and my ticket's dead in the water. There could be like a 38-35 game where no one's Heisman Trophy hopes are dead, and instead the talk is, ooh, these teams could face off again. I think he's going to show out in the first half of the season. That will make him part of a huge turnaround. People will be talking about Coach of the Year type stuff. They'll be talking about Broyles Award contention for Ben Arbuckle. They'll be talking about Heisman contention and all the quarterback awards for John Mateer. I think he's got the intangibles. The stuff that they say you can't coach, the stuff that you just got to be born with, the competitiveness, the fire, the juice, the ability to make a program and a room full of guys rally around you. He's got it. I'm telling you he's got it. I'm telling you he's got the ability to not so much struggle adjusting to the league, but he's got that kind of ability that makes the league adjust to him. I believe in him. I'm betting him to win the Heisman Trophy. And so that is my big sports betting related news around John Mateer on this Tuesday night. Did anyone think I was going somewhere else with that? Maybe. I don't know. Bradley, do we have we got a question about the show? I think we worked in here. I did want to address this. Yeah. Ben from Starkville, Mississippi hit me up. Bradley, you don't need to make an individual cut for this. If you watched the live show, you heard me say this. If you didn't, you won't. Ben said, I watched this show since before you went to CBS. Well, first off, thank you, Ben. He continues, I've always been worried about someone changing the show. Should I be worried that On3 will start influencing your show? You ought not be worried anyone will influence this show, Ben. First off, On3 is a great company to be partnered with. I promise you, I wouldn't have made this move if it wasn't. But to explain the dynamic out there that I tried to explain the other day, but I'll do it once more. I'll do this very quickly. Ben, there is not a single soul that has any editorial say-so over this show or any creative say-so over this show other than me. You're looking at him. So if the show sucks or the show gets ruined, it's because of me. It wasn't because of anyone else reaching their hand in the window and grabbing a hold of the steering wheel. That's been our entire purpose for the last 3 years, man. That is why I've negotiated my deals the way I have. That's why we have turned down some deals. I mean, guys, it's not I guess it is my place if I wanted to say. I'm not going to do this out of respect. If you ever worried about us ruining the show or selling out or whatnot, if I could show you the deals we've left on the table, you'd have no doubt about our commitment to keeping the show as is and keeping the experience as authentic as it's always been. It's ours. We own it. So we're in partnership with On3. I'll tell you what it will mean. You'll see a lot of their recruiting rankings and their data, their portal intel infused into the show. That's a plus. That's not a minus. They know what they're doing. So I'll infuse that. I mean, I'm very, very much aligned with a lot of the people who work there, but I'm aligned with a lot of the folks that work at Yahoo Sports. I mean, we're in a partnership with them. You don't think we'll talk to Ross Dellinger a lot more because of that? That's a plus. That's not a minus. So that's how we do our business now. We are a show that we own 100% of. We own all this. And then we're in partnership with a lot of companies and a lot of brands that we want to be in partnership with. But Ben, if you close your eyes and you just listen to and feel this show, it ought not feel any different than it has for the last several years. You may see a different or hear a different ad read every now and then because, we've got to pay the bills to keep the show free. But we're in several partnerships, guys. I mean, we're in a huge partnership right now that no one even knows about, nor will they, because we're not going to make it public, because it mainly helps us behind the scenes. I'll tell you this, we got a couple of more that we're going to announce next week that don't change the show. It actually adds things above and beyond. So there's a lot going on here. It's what we've worked towards, and it helps us to grow our infrastructure. And basically, it helps us to listen to what you say you want and then just produce more of it or produce it at a higher level. But the main thing's always the show. So this thing we've done 3 nights a week at 8 Eastern, 7 Central, and Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, that's not changing. We're not putting it behind a paywall. You've made it such that we don't have to do that. That's why we've been so aggressive about making sure our subscriber rate stays high and you tell your friends, and word of mouth has really powered this show. We still haven't spent a dime on advertising the show or marketing the show. You've done it for us. So you've made it possible. So we repay you as best we can by continuing to provide more of it, absolutely free of charge. So don't worry, Ben. You are safe here. Everything else is changing out there. You're safe here. Bold prediction time. Let's continue. 9, 8, 9. Yeah, we got 3 9.5s or bolder here. Solomon from Portland, Oregon. He hit me and he said, first bold prediction of the night, the Big Ten and the SEC will only get 6 bids total in the playoff this year. I'm going to make that a 9.5. Solomon, only 6 of 12, huh? Well, 14 of the top 20 odds to win the playoff overall at FanDuel are Big Ten and SEC teams. So what do we have to have happen here for only 6 of them combined to make the field. I think you have to have Notre Dame come through. So Notre Dame's got to be in the playoff. You got your G5 team in. So that's 2 spots. I think you got to have 2 Big 12s and you got to have 2 ACCs. That's what you got to have. So you need 4 things to be happening simultaneously. You need a lot of cannibalization in the Big Ten and the SEC, where it's just a bunch of 2 and 3 loss teams. Then you need separation in the ACC and the Big 12. So that would look like Clemson and Miami just separate from the pack. Or Arizona State, Texas Tech. It doesn't have to be those teams. But 2 teams separate from the packs entirely, and they're clear, bona fide, how could you leave them out caliber playoff teams. That's how it would have to happen. I just think that's a lot to have to happen. So I'm going to make that a 9.5. Next up, Murray said Texas A&M makes the SEC championship game. A little history lesson. You know this almost happened last year. Do you remember the Texas game? This is the last game of the regular season. We were there in College Station. If Texas A&M beats Texas, they go to Atlanta. Like this almost happened last year. Because they didn't, everyone just memory hold it. They forgot about it. I'm going to make this an 8.5. This is not the craziest thing in the world. A&M's got the 5th best odds to win the SEC. They are crystal clear on their identity. I already talked earlier in the show about how much I trust their tailback room, their offensive line, defensive identity. I think will round into form. Watch the vertical passing game. They're not going to light it up through the air, but 2 or 3 times per game, they'll be able to threaten you or at least make you fear the threat of it enough to where I think it'll balance them out and they'll be very good. And it's just the kind of team that I think has a very high floor because of how physical they'll play and how consistent the game that they bring week to week will be. So it's an 8.5 for me. Next one's much bolder. Michigan State beats Michigan and Penn State at home this year. Year 2, Jonathan Smith will have his offense clicking. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a 9.5. But I am higher on Michigan State than the Pack. It's one of my big sleeper teams, actually. We haven't talked about this on the show, I don't think. Aiden Childs in year 2 at quarterback. Jonathan Smith in year 2 as the head coach there. Got a really good wide receiver. Got a really good tight end. Got some portal infusion on the line of scrimmage offensively that I think may be underrated. And both of those teams come there. So Penn State comes there. According to the model, there's not a FanDuel number on this game yet. We'd have Penn State as over a 2-touchdown favorite at Michigan State if they played today. Michigan is an 8.5-point favorite at Michigan State. You got to win both of those games. That's tough. I'm going to make it a 9.5. However, I wouldn't just fall on the ground and faint if you told me it's going to happen. So there's this little sliver of my mind that keeps on saying, watch out, watch out. What's the last one here, Bradley? We've got, this got controversial today. Ben just really wanted to cause trouble from Lawrence, Kansas. He said 4 flying creatures will make the playoff this year. Examples, Oregon, Kansas, Georgia Tech, Iowa. Now, if you're watching, you notice I skipped over South Carolina. This created a straight-up fight in the office today, which bled over to social because I ran one of the most disappointing polls I've ever been a part of. Because if we're going to have 4 flight-based mascot teams make the playoff, first thing we have to decide is which ones can fly. South Carolina Gamecocks. That's a bird, right? They can fly, right? I took it to Twitter. Is a gamecock a flying animal? A whopping 70% of you failed me, and you said no, a gamecock is not a flying animal. A gamecock is straight up a flying animal. It's got wings. It can get itself off the ground. The Wright brothers were in the air for like 8 seconds, and the entire world of aviation thanks them. If the Wright brothers are responsible for flight, then a gamecock can fly. And for that reason, I'm including South Carolina as a flight-based mascot. Auburn, we had no clue what to do. Is it a tiger? Is it an eagle? I know every time I go there, they got eagles parading around the field. They got one flying down to crucify something at the 50-yard line before games. I don't think it's a live being that it eats. But nevertheless, Kansas, yes. Iowa, yes. Oregon, ducks can fly, absolutely. Louisville, yes. Georgia Tech, bzz, yep. And then the G5's just got a bunch of Temple, Owls, FAU. Rice, I don't even think of as having a mascot. I think of Rice being Rice. And it's irrelevant because Rice is not going to make the playoff this year. Yeah, all that to say, I don't think 4 of these teams are making the playoff. So I'm going to make this a 9.5. However, if Georgia Tech and Kansas is a huge sleeper team in the Big 12. So if Georgia Tech and Kansas and Oregon and Louisville made the playoff, that's not crazy. Jesse, I think I may have made it too bold. I want to make that a 9.25. Should I stick with 9? You know what? We're going to stick with 9.5 because anyone who nails a prediction of 9.5 boldness or higher gets a chalice. And just for the creativity, this person, Ben, from Lawrence, deserves a chalice of supremacy if it hits. We'll see. Tune in December. All those odds, by the way, well, not that one, but all the odds that we've shown you on the show tonight are available at FanDuel. I doubt that FanDuel is sick and twisted enough to put that prop bet up. Although, I mean, they put both Will and Taylor in a commercial, so why can't we get a prop bet over there? Someone call FanDuel. Flight-based mascot college football prop market would be gold this time of year or any time of year. Look, we appreciate them. They are the exclusive odds provider of our show. We get a metric ton of data from them. We get a lot of creativity from them during the season. Friday Night Lines, soon to return, brought to you by FanDuel. So thank you. Thank you, FanDuel, for being in our lives. I want to wrap the show tonight with one more team preview. Appreciate you guys watching live if you're tuned in, watching the replay, listening to the replay. Just make sure you're subscribed. Podcast and YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed. What do you expect from Michigan this year? Let's just predict this season right quick. To set the table, it was a really weird year last year. They couldn't throw the ball. They had no offense. And yet they beat Ohio State and beat Bama and landed Bryce Underwood and are recruiting well anyway. So, like, the record wasn't good, but then all the vibes were great at the end of the year. There's the NCAA stuff. Outsiders think they're going to get nailed. Michigan people are pretending it's not even happening. I have no clue what to expect there. So let's talk about biggest questions with this team. Bryce Underwood looks like he's going to be the day one starter for them at quarterback. So what is his year one impact? They were look at these stats. They were 113th in points per game last year, 129th in yards per game. It keeps getting worse. 131st in pass yards per game, 132nd in explosive plays, and honestly, it didn't even feel like they were that high. They were terrible, but they still won some games somehow, some way. So with Bryce Underwood, is it the kind of year where he has growing pains, or is it the kind of year where you go, that dude's a superstar, just boom? 6'4", 215, just one of the best high school players you will have ever seen. And Michigan spent for him, and they weren't bashful about it. What kind of production do you get from him? All right, and then the second question I have directly correlates with that, because I want to know, what can their passing game be? Samaj Morgan's their one wide receiver right now, or their wide receiver one. And I think he had 139 receiving yards last year. So there is hardly any proven production in the Michigan wide receiver room. Is it a case that there's untapped potential in that room that none of us know about because they haven't had a guy to throw the ball to him? We'll find out if that's the case early on. Or if it's the inverse, we'll also find that out early on. Number 3, is defensive churn an issue with them? They lost their top 6 tacklers. Now it's Michigan. So they're more equipped to backfill than your average team. They had 2 excellent defensive tackles. They were number 5 in rush yards per game last year, and they got to replace those guys. They've got an identity to live up to. You trust that Michigan just has guys. To what level are they capable of playing? Is it the number 3 defense or the number 13 defense in the country? It's not going to be 33rd or anything like that. They don't fall off at defense that much there. What is the best position group on this team? I call linebacker. They got Heisman there. They got Barham there. They got guys that aren't household names yet but would be other places. Ton of experience, ton of games played. They've got backups that have a ton of experience. Every one of them. Over 30-plus games started. You could have said corner for this as well, but I said linebacker. The breakout player on this team's interesting because he wasn't on the roster last year. Justice Haynes was at Alabama last year. He was a running back there. Never really took off like they thought he would. That had a lot to do with a lot of things. He's custom built to be a 1,000-yard rusher at Michigan. Now, the yards may be a little tougher to come by because defenses will key on that ground game all year until Bryce Underwood forces them to do otherwise. But I think Justice Haynes, man, 5'11", 210, just a bowling ball, really powerful kid, fits the Michigan system perfectly. Let's take a look at the schedule. It is workable. The schedule is workable. There's no Penn State. There's no Oregon. They do have a trip to Oklahoma out of conference week 2, but the strength of schedule is only 38th. We got them in our internal metrics, have them as the 13th toughest schedule in the Big Ten. At Nebraska is going to be amazing. That September 20th game, they will have already played a road game, so they've gotten that out of their system. New quarterback. I mean, Bryce Underwood versus Dylan Raiola in Lincoln. Hello. It's going to be amazing. They go to USC a couple of weeks later. That game was a classic last year. I expect nothing less. And then at the end of the year, it does not matter if Ohio State's favored by 40.5 against them. Until I see it, I give Michigan a solid chance there. I will not be fooled again. I'll probably get fooled again. That's our show. That's all we got. I appreciate it. We'll be back Thursday live, but probably earlier than normal. So make sure you set your notifications, set your alerts, tell a friend, tell a cousin, tell a nephew, tell a mom, tell a dad. Just subscribe to the channel. That's all we ask. Don't need any subscription fees or anything. We just need you to subscribe, which is free. Always has been, always will be. For Director Bradley, Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. We'll see you Thursday. Until then, have a great rest of your night, and God bless.